Okay, so today we are going to start talking about workflow rules and approval process. Under business logic, we talked about two things yesterday. We talked about the formulas and validation rules, right? And then we have workflow rules and approval process. Fine. Okay. So for the workflow rules and approval processes, basically workflow rule is all about a workflow rule is about automating some stuff, right? So if there is some action which needs to be automated, that's what you do using workflow rule. All right. So like you just want to send an email to someone, okay? And for sending that email, you want to define a logic that, okay, fine, every time I receive a lead, automatically an email should be sent to the lead, or every time a contact is created into the system, an email should be sent to the uh, contact, the email ID which is mentioned in the contact. That can be done using workflow rule. So this workflow rule can be used for automating actions. All right. So that's what we do with workflow rules, right? So let's understand workflow rules a little better. So you can automate actions. What all actions can be automated in Salesforce workflow rules? The first one is email alerts can be sent. Second is a field update can be done. A field can be updated. Third is email alert can be sent, field update can be done, task assignment can be done. You can assign a task to a user. And fourth is an outbound message. Okay. So these four things can be defined in the workflow rules. Email alerts can be sent, field updates, task assignments, outbound messages. Okay. Outbound message is sending a message to an external system. Right. So under workflow rules, you can automate any of these tasks based on a logic that you want to define. Okay. Logic can be anything. Your logic can be whenever a new email, new contact is created, or whenever a new opportunity is created, which exceeds a certain amount, or whenever there is a new account created. So logic can be anything. Okay. Criteria you can put as anything, and you can define one of these actions in the workflow. All right. So let's start with a simple workflow rule. We'll take an example and do it so that you guys understand it a little better. Uh, So the first is, okay, every time a lead is created, an automated email should go to the lead. Okay. So every time a lead is created, we want an automated email to go to the lead. That's what we do. That's what we want to do. Now for doing this, we will use workflow rule. So we know that we can send email alerts using workflow rule. So this should be done using the workflow rule. All right. So while you're trying to write a workflow rule, there are a few steps which you'll have to follow. When you want to define the workflow rule. For workflow rule, you'll have to first of all decide on the object, which object you want to define the workflow rule for. Second is gonna be your evaluation criteria. Third is your rule criteria. Fourth is action. Okay, so if you're trying to define a workflow rule, first of all, you should answer these four questions. Okay, you should be able to answer these four questions, and then your defining workflow rule will become easy. All right. So in this case, if I have to define a workflow rule for this, what do you think should be the object? Which object are we talking about here? Which object are we talking about here? In this particular case,
Lead.
lead is the object. Correct.
Lead.
Okay. Rule criteria and evaluation criteria are two things. Evaluation criteria means when do you want the rule to get evaluated? Okay. When do you want the workflow rule to get evaluated? It can be evaluated when a new record is created. It can be evaluated when an existing record is updated, or it can be evaluated every time the record is being updated. All right. So this criteria, let's say I just want this rule to get evaluated when a new record is created. Right? That's what is mentioned, right? Every time a lead is created, I want to send. So I don't want to send the email when the record is being updated. I just want to send the email when a new record is created. Correct? So that's what I will put in the evaluation criteria. The rule criteria will be email not equals to null, something like this, because at least that lead should have an email, valid email ID, then only I can send the email. So that can be my rule criteria. Action is send an email. Okay, so before you start actually doing the workflow rule on Salesforce, you should you should be having answer to these four questions: which object you are going to do it for, what action you want to perform, what will be your evaluation criteria, what will be your rule criteria. Now once you have answer to these questions, now it's going to be a matter of 2 minutes for you to do it on the Salesforce. So give me a minute, let me log in into Salesforce. Yep. So here we are. Now we have to create the workflow rule. To create the workflow rule, all that you have to do is you just have to go to setup, and under setup you have to go to create. No. Yeah. On the setup, go to create, go to workflow and approvals, and then click on workflow rules. And then say continue. Okay. Now this is where you're gonna define the rule. Click on new rule and select the object. So which object we have to select? We have already decided. Now you have answered to all those questions. Object is lead. Go to next. Rule name can be anything. Evaluation criteria: when the record gets created, then only it should get evaluated. Rule criteria: email should not be equal to null, so the email not equal to blank. Save and next. That's it. We are only left with defining the action. Add workflow action here. Which action? I told you four options. Task can be assigned, email can be sent, field update, auto outbound message. Out of these four, we are just planning to do the email alert now. Click on email alert. Okay. Just give a label and name to the email, and you have to decide on the template. Now since you are automating the email, you have to decide on the template which needs to be sent. All right, you have an option of creating your own template. If you want to create your own template, you can go to communication templates, and from here you can go to email templates. All right, in case you want to define your own template. Currently I'm going to use one of the existing templates, predefined ones. Yep, take one. Now you can, okay, who needs to receive the email now? Who is my recipient? Receiver is the email field on the lead, correct? I want to send it to the email field on the lead. In that case, I will select email field. All right. If you want to send it to a certain user, you can select that. If you want to send it to the owner of that lead, you can select it. But in this case, I'm just going to send it to the email field mentioned in the lead table. So that's it. You also have an option of putting, marking 5 additional email IDs, and these 5 additional email IDs will be copied, CC, okay, in the email. Then click on save. That's it. All right. That's it. Now click on done. The email alert is defined. Action is ready. Now just click on done and finally activate this. So before your workflow rule starts working, you'll have to activate the workflow rule. Okay. If you do not activate, the workflow rule is not going to work. It's pretty similar to what we discussed in the for the validation rule. So till the time you do not activate the validation rule, it's not going to work. All right. So activate it. That's it. My workflow rule is ready. Now if I create a new lead here, every time a new lead is created, that lead will receive an email. Let's say I make an entry for a new lead. Okay, but that lead should have an email defined here, because the email, actually the email alert is going to be sent on this email ID. gmail.com, click on save. Yep, Let me check if I have received an email. Yes, we see this. I've received an email. So what is in the body of the email? Don't look into that because that's completely dependent on what template you selected. But this is what the email is going to be. This is how it will work. All right. So you don't have to manually now go ahead and send the emails to people. You can define your rule criteria, evaluation criteria, and automatically Salesforce will take care of sending the emails. Clear? Okay. Now the next that we will talk is approval process. Now for an approval process, it's a complete process of getting certain things approved within Salesforce. All right. So you don't have to manually get the approvals. The complete process can be defined within Salesforce. So if there is a record which is created and that record needs to be approved by someone, so an approval request can be sent within Salesforce. The other party can approve or reject in the Salesforce itself, and whatever he does, what the approver, whether he approves or rejects, that status can again get back. That status can again get updated back within Salesforce itself. So there's nothing which is getting done outside Salesforce. Everything is being controlled within Salesforce itself. Got it? So in an approval process, you have the option of defining a complete approval process. It's pretty much similar to a workflow rule, but in workflow rule, what is happening? It's a one-way thing. In workflow rule, some criteria is met, and based on you perform action, that's it. End of the story for the workflow rule. Correct? But for an approval process, it's basically a process, a complete process. You create a record, you send it for approval, the approver receives the request, he approves or rejects. Based on that, some action happens back on the record. So it's going to be more like a cycle, complete cycle which gets which gets done. All right. So in approval process, basically what happens, let's understand the process, how it flows, and then I will tell you about the steps. So the process is, record is created, okay, it's submitted for approval. If it requires approval, it is submitted for approval. Approver receives it. Approver receives the request. Now the approver will approve or reject. Okay. So the approver approves or rejects based on whatever he wants to do. Record gets updated based on approver's action. Okay, so if he approves, you might want to update the record as an approved record. If he rejects, you might want to update the record as a rejected record. Correct. So that's what we have to uh, do. All right. So for the approval process, again, you have a few questions that you need to ask before you can start. Question number one is, which object are you going to define the approval process for? Question number two, who is going to be the approver? Three, entry criteria. Here it's not rule criteria or evaluation criteria. Here we call it entry criteria. So which all records, uh, you know, require the approval. So that's the entry criteria. So which object, which approver, what entry criteria, and after the entry criteria, you also have to define, okay, which object, which approver, entry criteria, and you also have to define the we also have to define actions. Correct. Entry criteria is done. Actions. Now here action is not just one action that you have to define. Here you'll have to define actions about different steps, because there are multiple steps and stages involved in this approval process. Correct. So you have to define submission action. Submission action is the action which will take place when the record is submitted for approval. Then approval action. If the record is approved, then what all actions will happen? Rejection actions. If the record is rejected, then what will happen? Recall actions. If someone who has submitted the record for approval wants to recall it, then what will happen? Alright. So you have to define all these actions here. Okay. So that's it. Yep. Select the object, select who is going to be the approver, select the entry criteria for the records to be submitted for approval, and actions need to be defined for each stage: submission, approval, rejection, recall. All right. Okay. Okay. So for approval process, let's do a simple example so that you guys understand. For campaigns, let's say whenever you are planning a campaign, any campaign which has a budget of more than $100,000 needs an approval. Okay. Any campaign which has a budget of more than $100,000 needs an approval. All right. That's what we plan to do from the campaigns. All right. So just give me one quick minute. I'll have to connect it to the charger. 1 minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the approval process that we are going to define. Okay. Any campaign which has a budget of more than $100,000 needs an approval. Okay. Approval from some ABC user. Okay. Now we have to define the approval process for this. So let me first of all again start thinking about these questions. Answer these questions. Object is going to be campaign. Entry criteria is budget greater than 100,000. Approver is ABC user. Whoever is a user will pick it up. Action. Okay. What action we want to do here? Let's say in this case, I'll work with a field update. Okay. So let's have a field on the campaign object called approval status. and in that field there should be four options. On submission, I want to update the status of the record or status of the campaign to update the status to pending. Update the status to approved. Update the status to rejected. And for recall, I want to update the status to recall. Okay. All right. So that's what I plan to do. Now to update this status, first of all, I'll have to make sure that I create this approval status field on the campaign object. So let's start with creating that field, because in the field only we are going to update that, right? Right now that field is not there. So all that you have to do is go to your setup, customize campaigns, fields, click on new, and we have to create the field, which is going to be a pick list. Go to next. Approval status can be name of the field and the pick list, and there will be four options: pending, approved, rejected, recalled, cancelled. Next. So this is just a field that I've created, and this value of this field will be controlled using our approval process. All right. So anytime a record is approved, automatically this approval status will appear as approved. So if you go to campaign now, and if you click on one particular campaign, we have the approval status field here. All right. So this field will be automatically updated based on the approval process that we define. That's what we are trying to do. Okay. So okay, let me just go ahead and create the approval process. We have the answer to all the questions that we have done. All that I have to do is I just have to go ahead and say setup, create workflows and approvals, approval processes. In approval process, you have to, which is the object? Campaign, right? Campaign object. And then go to create new approval process, say use jumpstart wizard. Name it anything, approval process one or whatever you want. Now entry criteria we need to specify. What is my entry criteria? Entry criteria is going to be, can you have the microphones muted please everyone? Yeah, thank you. Entry criteria is the budget of the campaign more than 100,000. So budgeted cost greater than 100,000. That's what my entry criteria. So only records which meet this criteria can be submitted for approval. So that's what an entry criteria means. So this is not mandatory. If you want all the records to go for approval, let's say if your company has a rule that all the campaigns need an approval, So then you don't need to define this entry criteria. Then any record can be submitted for approval. But if you define an entry criteria, only the records where budgeted cost is greater than 100,000 will be submitted for approval. The ones which do not have the budgeted cost of 100,000 will not be submitted for approval. Got it? Let the submitter choose the approver manually. Okay. Or you, okay. Now selecting the approver. So while you are trying to select the approver, you have options of letting the submitter choose the approver manually, which means the person who's going to submit the record for approval, he will have the option of choosing the approver. Or you can automatically assign an approver using a standard or custom hierarchy field. Or you can automatically assign to a certain approver. So let me go ahead with this particular thing. He is the approver. Okay. If you want to send it to multiple approvers, you can add more people here, add row. Okay. So you can send it to multiple approvers also. Sometimes you have a requirement, you want to send it to multiple of them. So you can add more people here. So done. Only thing that we have to do now is defining the action. We are done with almost everything. Object, entry criteria, approver, everything is decided. Now comes the action part. As I told you earlier, that here it's not going to be single action. Here it has to be action for each stage. So action here with means action for submission, approval, rejection, recall, right? So if you come here, you will see that you have the option of initial submission action, approval actions, final rejection actions, recall actions. All right. So on initial submission, what do I want to do? I want to go ahead and update the field. So this time it's not going to be an email alert. It's going to be a field update. Just give it any name. Which field needs to be updated? Approval status. Okay. And what value should it be updated to? It should get updated to pending. So when a record is submitted for approval, the value of this field should become pending. Save it. In the approval action, you can just say add new field update. Field that you want to update is approval status. And the value that you want to update it to will be approved. Save. The same way for rejection action, it should get updated to rejected. So go to final rejection action, add new field update. I want to update the approval status field and I want to update it to rejected. Add new field update. Cancel. All right. So that's how it is.
Yeah.
Now the actions are defined. We have defined action for all the four stages. Approval process is ready. If you want, you have an option of viewing a diagram of the approval process because it's a process. So they allow you to view the diagram of it. This is just for your understanding. I need this Adobe Flash here. I don't have. Okay. But anyhow, you can click on this and it will show you the flow chart. There's nothing that you have to do with the diagram. It just shows you the flow chart for you to understand it a little better. Next thing that you have to do is you just have to activate the approval process. The same way you activated the validation rule and you activated the workflow rule, you have to activate the approval process also. Activated. After activating this approval process, you cannot add or remove approval steps. That's absolutely fine. Click on OK. Done. Now my approval process is active. Now if I create a campaign, let's test whether the approval process is working fine or not. So if you create a campaign, click on new. Campaign name is Seva, active campaign, something there. Expected revenue is, budgeted cost is 120,000. Okay, more than 100,000. I've created the campaign, saved it. Approval process will not start automatically. Like the workflow rule triggered automatically, approval process does not trigger automatically. This needs to be initiated by the user. Alright. So approval request will be sent only when you come to that campaign and click on submit for approval. Okay. So currently the approval status for this is blank. It's blank, right? Now I'm going to submit it for approval. So when I submit it for approval, that field value should become pending, right? Let's see if that happens. Submit it for approval. Okay. See, the approval status has become pending. Alright. So the approval status has become pending now automatically, and that's because that's what we defined there in the approval process, in the action. So approval process is pending. Now next what we have to do, we just have to go ahead and, so the next thing that we have to do is we have to go ahead and define the, we'll have to go and approve or reject it. So Ravi, can you check whether you have received an email on your email ID,
1 second.
approval request? So this will ideally go to Ravi because he is the approver.
Let me check 1 minute. No, up till now I'm not getting an email.
Which email you are checking?
Ravi250099 @gmail.com.
1 minute.
What's email ID in the Salesforce? Let me check.
Ravisha1603 @gmail.com.
Okay. And okay.
Got it?
Just 1 sec. Yeah, 1 second. Just 1 second.
Yep.
I open it. Yeah, I got one mail.
Okay. So just
Hello.
keep yeah.
Yeah, I got one
Just
mail.
keep that mail open. I'm making you presenter.
Okay.
So now let's have a look at what kind of an email the approver will receive, all right, and how the approver will actually approve or reject. So
Hmm.
just for you
Have you
guys to
seen my
understand the process.
email?
Not yet. We're not yet seeing your screen. Yes, we can see your screen. Correct. So see, this is the
Yeah.
approval request email. By default, Salesforce sends it to the approver. Okay. The moment it's submitted for approval, the approver will get this email. Okay. Now, once the approver
Hmm.
gets this email, and this will be the mail body, and there is the link. You can click on this link
Yeah.
to approve or reject the request. If you are the approver,
Okay.
just click on the link.
Okay. Hmm. Okay. I have option
Fine.
of approve, reject, or cancel.
Right. So you guys will have this page where, I mean, when I say you guys, the
Hmm.
approver, if you are the approver, then you will have the option of writing a comment and then you can approve or reject. Now, based on whatever the approver does, my campaign will get updated. If the approver approves it, the campaign gets updated to approved campaign. If the approver rejects it, the campaign will get updated to the reject campaign. So click on approve now.
Okay. But if I want to show that's what the exactly you have done, so means approval have a authority to show what the actually campaign is there.
Sorry, you want to see what campaign it is?
Means yeah. Means
Yeah,
yeah.
you can.
Means before. Yeah,
Yes.
before approval this before I give approval, I should check that whether there is a right campaign or not, means that's according to the requirement. Like,
Right. So go back to that email again.
oh, 1 second. Okay. Okay, and click on link.
Click on the link.
Okay. Okay. Oh, but data is not available because I already
Because
do
you
the
already
approval.
approved. Yeah. So you will have the option to
Yeah.
view the record. That should not be a problem. You are approver. You will always
Okay.
have the access to that
Yeah.
link. Fine. Now you have
And one more thing
updated,
that
right?
okay.
Yep. Good.
One more thing that I want to ask. Suppose if we want to give these rights to the user, means we have suppose two user. One user is a normal executive, and the second user is like a manager or anything like upper level.
Mm-hmm.
So suppose if we want to make the criteria like this, whatever the executive have make the entry, all the approvals will be done by managers. That's like a different user.
That's where
So in
that's
that,
one thing that you define while defining the approval. Okay.
okay, okay. Because this is already administration user.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
So now if you come back to this particular record on the campaign record, C1 is a campaign. Since it got approved, you will get to see the option approved here. Alright. In case the approver rejects it, it gets updated to rejected. Alright. And if you scroll down, then you will have the option of viewing the approval history. So what process has gone for the approval, or what process, or what all steps have taken place for this approval request, the approval history, what all things have happened. So initially it was submitted and then it was approved. What was the time when it was approved, who was the person who actually approved it, who was it assigned to, and all that stuff. Got it? So this is how you will have the approval history in case you want to check the history. And final status appears to be on the approval status field, that it's an approved campaign. So now you know that, okay, fine, you can run this campaign because it is approved. Who approved? Approver is also mentioned in the approval history, right? The entire approval process is at one place. Now there's just one small thing which I want you guys to understand here. We just saw that the approval request is being sent to the approver. Approver has the option to click on the link and then he goes and approves or rejects, right? Sometimes it may happen the person who is approving might not have that much of a time to click on the link and then go and check and all that stuff, right? And he might want to just approve or reject right from the email itself. You might want to just reply to the email, and whatever he replies on the email, that itself should either approve or you that can be used for approving or rejecting. Correct? And that becomes even more important if the person who is approving is not logged in into Salesforce. So if you're not logged in into Salesforce just for doing the approval, you might not want to log in into Salesforce and then click on the link and all that stuff, right? So Salesforce gives a very nice option of email approval, okay? Approval through email response. For that, all that you have to do is you just have to go to setup, create workflow and approvals. Under that, there's this option of process automation settings, okay? And here you have to enable the email approval response. Enable email approval response. That's what you have to enable, and then click on save. Now the email approval is enabled. Okay. The same campaign, let me resubmit it and let's see what email we received this time. Let me submit the same record for approval again. So Ravi will again receive an email. Ravi, can you just please check if you have received an email?
Yeah, I will check 1 minute.
Have you received the email?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes,
Can you open this email?
yeah, of course.
Okay. Now if you see there is a little longer story written here. No, no, don't click on the link. Just open the email.
Oh, sorry. Can I go back?
Just go to the email.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. See, here you have the option. Here the approver has the option of clicking on the link or reply to this email with one of these words in the first line of the email message. So in the first line of the email message, while he is replying, he can write approve, approved, or yes, or reject, rejected, or no. And if you're replying via email, you can also add comments on the second line. So in case you have any comments, you can put that in second line. So if the approver wants to reply this just by writing approve, then also the record will get approved. Got it?
Oh,
So don't have to basically click on the link. So just go and reply to the email with approve. I think there is a space that you have copied. Remove that
yeah.
space.
Okay.
First space removed. Yeah.
It's okay. Like the yeah.
Yes.
Now I click on send.
Yes. And when you click on send, it should again approve the record. Got it? So let me just come back to my screen and see if it got done or not. So this email approval response sometimes may take a few minutes. I mean, it's something which might not get done immediately
Immediately. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
depending on the email server and all that. But it
Yeah.
will get done. So don't worry, even if it does not reflect immediately, it gets updated. Okay, so this is the pending record. Let me update, refresh it and see. Yeah, it shows as approved. And you can go and check in the approval history. See, it was approved. So this time it was, we never clicked on the link, but it just got approved through the email, like through the email response. Correct. So that's how it works. Let me know if there is any question or doubt here for the approval request or for the workflow.